Hello. Right now, I'm going to talk about Native Americans and the American Revolution. So, the British defeat the French in the French and Indian War, otherwise known as the Seven Years' War, and that's going to alter the balance of power. Because France is banished from North America, it maintains a few colonies in the Caribbean, but that's going to be a blow to Native Americans because the Native Americans and French had relied on one another as a counterweight to the British colonies. And you can see that in the population totals I have provided in my lecture. So in 1762, 1763, there is a massive uprising among Native Americans in the Ohio River Valley and the what we would call the Upper Midwest. And this is known after it's known as Pontiac's Rebellion after Pontiac, one of the Native American chiefs, and they attack British forts. And this is significant for a couple reasons. One of them is that we wouldn't normally think of all Native Americans as united because there is, of course, diversity. When the different European powers came to the New World, the European powers tried to implement divide and conquer strategies, playing one tribe against another, but the Native Americans did the same thing. They might try to pit the French against the Spanish or the Dutch against the English, and they were largely successful. But again, with the French gone, that spells trouble for Native Americans, and at the same time, there are Native Americans who are saying, we can't really compromise anymore. There is something intrinsically pernicious about white culture. So we need to reject white white manufactured goods and alcohol. And so that is part of this sort of pan-Indian revival, which is a precursor to the one that would occur around the War of 1812. Now, what's the other reason that Pontiac's rebellion is significant? Well, the British respond to this by a little bit of a compromise, and they create a Land Proclamation in 1763. I do have a map on my wall that I'm going to show you. Hopefully this works. You can see it, and I'll talk loud enough here, but right here is the Appalachian Mountains, and those forts, the attacks on the British forts had occurred here. So what the British do in this Land Proclamation is say, we're not going to allow our colonists, the American colonists, to move west of the Appalachian Mountains. And that is supposed to placate the concerns of the Native Americans. But guess what? The American colonists don't like that at all. They want access to this land. Remember that land, the ability to own property and be independent and self-sufficient, this is central to the concept of English liberty. So if the American colonists feel that the British are unfairly cutting them off from economic opportunity, they're not going to be too happy with British rule. Now, why do I bring this up? Because it shows us that, believe it or not, access to Indian lands was, I think many would argue, one cause of the American Revolution. Okay, it wasn't just about taxes. If you study the American Revolution, you realize that it is a multi-sided affair. It is a affair to reorganize society along new lines. Some people call it even a civil war at home between at least two, probably more, but at least two different factions of British subjects and citizens. So the colonists wanted more access to Indian lands, and if the year is 1763, we know that the revolution is coming. It's not coming immediately, but we're kind of setting that up. And on your own, you can think about the tax policies that are initiated by the British Parliament in order to pay for the debts that Britain had incurred from the French and Indian War. and how these taxes passed by Parliament angered the American colonists. But I also want you to think about something when it comes to the American Revolution. Being raised in America, we are often told that the Revolution is intrinsically good, that you almost should not question it, that there's a lot of patriotism and pride in the country, and there's almost a celebratory and triumphalist and sentimental attitude about it, that this was a greater cause for mankind and an advancement for humanity. I think that many historians would want to be skeptical of that perspective and ask you to question it. Now here's why. If you pitched it in this way and realized that during the American Revolution, it's the British and the Americans. What if you thought about it in a way that the British were on the side of restricting settlement to help Native Americans, while the Americans wanted Indian lands? What if you thought about it from the perspective of African American slavery, and you realized that the British, as shown by Lord Dunmore's proclamation, the British were more on the side of promising liberty to Southern slaves, while the Americans, many of the planter elite, were angry at the British and wanted to fight the British because they saw the British as a threat to slavery. So, if you consider the perspective of black slaves and Native Americans, that might allow you to be skeptical of whether or not the American Revolution was an intrinsic good. Of course, another perspective to have is, perhaps we shouldn't even make a moral judgment on whether something was good or bad. Perhaps you may think it's the job of a historian just to present the past as it happened. And certainly that is an important discussion to have, but I hope that you think about that on your own, and I hope you're also enjoying this online class. Take care. Bye-bye.